Okay, this is for you, Ransom. We're not actually going to be using the enum anymore since we're returning a string value. We can use it later, but right now it's not important. So let's go through everything we learned and recap it. Here's our header file for C++. Here's a namespace for std, which allows us to not have to use std blah 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 string. You know, we can just call it, you know, string, like that. Here are our variables that we can use inside of the class. Here in our public constructor, if we want to initialize the person with information, we can, and after we do that, we set their information that we got to these variables up here. Let's say the person doesn't have information yet, and we want to get it later. We have an empty constructor, which allows us to start the class without any errors. Otherwise, if we put an empty person, like if we didn't have this, if we tried to do an empty person, we would get errors. This is a deconstructor, so whenever the program finishes, and we have that line at the end, person.dot squiggly line person, it will make sure that it deletes itself from memory so that it doesn't take up more RAM than it needs to. Then we have a public void getPerson where this is pretty self-explanatory. It asks for a name, you give it a name, it asks for a credit card number, it gives you enter a credit card number, blah blah blah, and then it stores it to the public information, or sorry, the private information, like up here. So the reason why we have it stored up here is, let's say the person it's pretty much equivalent to this here, except we need to actually set it to these variables, otherwise it would equal nothing. Next, we have our print info, which just prints out every variable we have. Next, we have our credit card checker. So, we have a while loop. While credit card is greater or equal than 10, it'll divide itself by 10, which basically will divide it until it gets into the first digit. And once it reaches the first digit, it will stop dividing. Then it will check if the first number is 4, it'll return Visa. If it's 5, return MasterCard. If it's 6, return Discover. Otherwise, return invalid. So if it starts with like a 1 or a 2, it won't be a valid card. Otherwise, we return null. This will never happen, but the programming language needs a default return value. So if I didn't have that there and I compile it, on some compilers, it will say, you know, you need to have a return value. So we just put null, and null means nothing. As you can see, equals 0, which stands for nothing in here. Here's our main void. So what we can do here is, here's some information we have. I'm actually gonna get rid of this for now. Let's say we have a person, and inside of this person, we want to pass through name, credit card, or credit number, CVV, expiry month, expiry year. Let's do that. And let's do person print info. This, when we compile and run the program, will output Nicholas. There's my credit card number, there's all that. And let's say person dot check credit card number, and say cout. Compile it, run it, and we can see that it starts with a 5, and if we come back here, if it starts with a 5, it's a MasterCard. Let's say I set it to a 2, and we come back and compile and run it, it's an invalid card. Let's say if we set it to a 4, we save it and compile it, it is now a Visa. So we can see that it works. We can have multiple people. We can have person 2, and instead we don't have their information yet. So let's say we have this error. I don't know why the hell it's happening. Shouldn't be. Oh, uppercase, person 2. My bad. So then we can say person2 and get person, we made that function where it'll ask them for all their information. We can say person2 dot print their information, and person2 dot check credit card name, the same as what we did here. And we can actually just copy this line and said change that to person2, and at the end we can say person2 dot deconstruct, so erase them from memory. So if we now run it, first it'll ask us for a name. I'm going to say Rando. Let's actually, Ranso. Your credit card number is this, 189, this 2021. As we can see, Ranso's printed out with their name, their credit card, their CVV, their dates, and you can see it's a Discover card because yours started with 6. That when we entered it in, and we can see 6 goes to Discovery card. Next, it prints out person. So we have person with the constructor already built in, and we print their info, and we can see I start with MasterCard. So I hope that helped you understood. I hope that helps you understand that more. We'll work on this more tomorrow, and I hope you get some good sleep, buddy. Take care.